Welcome back to the garage here at Basin Motorsports. I'm Canaan. Today I'm going to show you how to assemble and operate a new Quickjack 5000, 6000, or 7000 model. Now, one of the things you're going to find when you get your Quickjack, you're going to get 3 boxes. 2 are going to be kind of surfboard shaped. These are the big jacks themselves. Will come in each individual box. And you'll get a 3rd box, smaller but still significantly heavy, that has your pump, hoses, and everything else in it. First thing you want to do is cut open every box, see what's inside, take inventory. All right, so here's what everything looks like unpacked. You're going to have your 2 ramps. One is labeled as a left, one is labeled as a right. Now, one of them should have a assembly manual here, which is what I'm going to follow as I go through this. And here are all your pieces laid out. You have your connections, you have a bottle of thread sealant, your hoses, your lifting blocks over there on the left side. You have a smaller set and a larger set. And of course, then you have your pump and the list of all the components inside. Now, one thing I will note is that there is no hydraulic fluid or transmission fluid, which is required for this. So that will be an extra purchase you need to do. That needs 2.5 quarts. So I have 3 here. And I've also noted a lot of reviews online say that the thread sealant there is really, really poor. So they recommend throwing it away and go ahead and use some thread tape, which I do have here and I will use during this assembly. Now it's time to break out the assembly manual, kind of get these jacks out of the box, and we'll start put everything together. All right, now with your jacks going to be taken out of all the packaging, you can go ahead and move the positioning handles there, which are come in shrink wrap. You can just go ahead and take them off, set them aside, because you won't need them right now. Now we're going to go ahead and double check that our jacks are aligned correctly for assembly. So the big difference, you look, they're pretty darn close. But if you see on the outside here, you're going to have your locks. So if you want these little silver buckle there, that is your lock for your half or your fully lifted spot. So you want those to be to the outside. So if you notice, you're looking at it, you've got one to the out and the other one to the out. And that way, now we can go ahead and get started, get everything assembled. All right, so according to the manual, here are going to be the tools you need. Basically a metric hex key set, a socket and ratchet set, a wrench set or an adjustable wrench for your fittings, and a screwdriver set. Now it does note to keep a rag handy just in case hydraulic fluid or your ATF spills. And at some point, you're going to need 2.1 quarts is what it says. And the online manual says 2.5, so I bought 3 just to be sure on both cases. All right, so we're looking at page 17 here of the manual. You're going to see the unpacking, which is exactly what I have. You have them laid out, and you can kind of see where it notes the lock bars are on the outside, how your hydraulic hoses are going to go underneath there, and then your power unit. So as I kind of pan back, you'll see I do have that laid out. You have your Quickjacks there, each one with a bar on the outside. Here's your pendant. I'll go ahead and move that in position, and then all you have is your hoses and your connections. And then you're going to start priming everything up to lift. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump right into assembling our fittings onto our main hydraulic cylinders. Now you're going to have 2 of these fittings. You're going to see one is going to be kind of an ORB fitting, which is the big one down here with the O-ring. The other one is going to be a JIC, which goes to your hydraulic hoses. Now one thing you're going to notice is that you're going to take a plug out. That's going to take a 6mm hex. Let's go ahead and pop that out. And what you're going to find is that the washer that goes with it is going to be, at least on mine, is kind of a bronze gold, if you would say. Go ahead and make sure that comes off so that your O-ring will sit down onto the hydraulic cylinder. Now, once you go ahead and thread this in, you're going to notice that there is, again, not putting sealant on this because it has an O-ring. So you're going to, again, thread it up. And you want it to be kind of pointed up as a little bit of an angle, not straight up so your hose will contact the vehicle, and not necessarily straight out or 90 degrees horizontal with the floor. So just kind of angle it up a little bit, maybe 10 to 15 degrees is plenty. That way your hoses will then come up a little bit over your frame here. That way it's not going to contact your vehicle. Go ahead and do that on both of your hydraulic cylinders. And again, these are just taking probably about an 18mm wrench or an adjustable wrench, either way. Snug them down, don't go crazy with the tightness. And then you can go ahead and put your hydraulic hoses, your short hydraulic hoses, onto the end of your fittings here. All right, so next we're going to go ahead and work on our short hydraulic hoses. Now this is the fitting I just put in. I'm going to take the plastic cap off the end I'm going to use some thread sealant on here. Now it does come with a bottle. If you don't like that, I would just prefer, me personally, I would just go ahead and use some tape there. Give it 2 or 3 fittings or around. Make sure you're going clockwise this way to make sure it tightens correctly, and then make sure you're not blocking your orifice down here. So once you have there, you can go ahead and put on your fitting. Again, this is going to be one end of the short fitting, and it's the only female end that's going to screw on there. So once you have it done, you're going to bring it out. You're going to bring it under both of these frames, out underneath. That way it won't get caught up in there. And then once you have both of those done, we'll move on to the next. All right, next piece is we're going to add our short fittings, or short hoses with our fittings. Now what you're going to find is that when you go ahead and get to your fittings itself, you're going to have some distinct ones. You have 4 of one set, or one type. These each, 2 of these each, are going to go to each long hydraulic hose. You're going to have the ends with the O-ring here that are screw in. That's going to go to your unit, or your hydraulic power unit. And then you have the 2 that go to the short ends of the hydraulics. So again, these need thread, or these need thread tape on the threads. That will not, because it has an O-ring, and both ends of the long hoses that are in the coils, you can cut those off, put 2 of these connectors on, and that will make them ready to go. These do not have O-rings, so these do get thread tape or thread sealant. Again, piece going to the unit, O-ring, no sealant, no O-ring, gets tape or sealant. All right, so next thing after you do your long hoses, you're going to find that there's 3 zip ties that are holding it together. One is kind of away from the fittings, the other 2 are close to the fittings. I found it was easy just to cut off one band right near a fitting, make the attachment from the thread tape and to the connector, do the second one, and leave the 3rd zip tie alone until you're completely done. And you want to connect one end of the long hydraulic hose to the short end via the quick connect. Then you can go ahead and disconnect it if you want to. It just keeps it a little bit tighter, a little bit easier to deal with. That way it's not flopping around. And remember, when we put on thread tape, we want to make sure that we are not blocking the orifice into or in the fitting itself. So just go ahead and double check yourself there. That way you have no other trouble. And even if you're using sealant, it's good practice. Don't block the orifices. All right, so the next thing we're going to do now is going to go ahead and pump up our air cylinders. We're going to take the caps off, and we're going to use something small, like a small Allen wrench, to make sure that we bleed out any of the current air that's in there. And once you do that, you're going to inflate the air cylinders between 40 and 50 psi. Now you can do that with a compressor. I'm just going to go ahead and use a small little USB or a lithium powered battery. You can see I've got it set there to 44, which is between 40 and 50. It'll go ahead and pump it up to 44 and stop. And then I can just go ahead and let the air back out and do the same with the other one. All right, once you have your air cylinders filled up between 40 and 45, I set my little air motor compressor to 45 psi, so between 40 and 50, sorry. Going ahead, next you're going to put in your fittings on your pump. So you can kind of see here, this is my unit. This is a 110 volt, so it plugs into the wall, and it's got 2 fittings. You can see down here. Now, the easiest way to do this is they are marked A and B. If you look on the reservoir here, you can see in the upper right there, it says A, and there's a B. With these, you want to go ahead and put in the B first, or the lower, or the middle, however you want to call it. Put in the B first to make sure that you have enough space for a wrench to get on it, then do your A. If you do the A first, you really can't get a wrench or a socket on the B. So once you go ahead and have those in, it's time to go ahead and plug these in, and then we're going to go ahead and start adding fluid. All right, so the next thing we're going to do now is go ahead and fill up our fluid reservoir. Now I'm going to go ahead and use a synthetic ATF, or automatic transmission fluid, from Amsoil. I had it in the shop, but there are multiple ways you can go ahead and fill this. All right, so the approved fluids are going to be a general purpose ISO 32, 46, or 68 hydraulic fluid, an ATF like Dexron 3, Dexron 6, Mercon 5, Mercon LV, I don't know what number that is, or any synthetic multi-vehicle automatic transmission fluid, which is what I have there. Now you're going to start with adding in at least 2 quarts. That's what I've done so far, and it's going to come up where you want it to be about a ½ inch below the surface or the rim. So here in the menu, you can just see where it says the fluid should be appropriately 0.5 inch or 12 millimeters below the fill hole when the quick jacks are completely lowered. So you can see mine are lower down. I haven't done anything yet other than plug in the unit. And so I made a small little gauge here. So this is just a piece of a popsicle stick, tongue depressor, whatever you want. I measured from the end a 0.5 inch or half inch, and I can just touch it down in there. And you can see now that it matches right there with the stick. So you've got a half inch and it's filled to this point. Now we need to work on bleeding out our air cylinders. Now make sure you don't forget to put on your cap back together so the cap is back on. Now it's on finger tight, and I also use a wrench just to give it a little bit of snug. Now I need to make sure that my breather is open, so it specifies in the manual whether you need to open this or not. So mine is the type that needs to be open. I put a mark at the 12 o'clock so you can see it doesn't turn right. So it says to do a quarter turn counterclockwise. That way, so it went from 12 to 9 o'clock. Now it is ready to put the blocks under the quick jacks and get things going. All right, it's time to go ahead and bleed your cylinders. Now you can see there I have on the end of the cylinder, there is an Allen key. It's a 3/16. So I've just got a ratchet on there for a little bit of extra oomph, I guess you would say. Now you're going to take two of the blocks that come with it, and they're going to be two large and one medium. You're going to stack them right below the cylinder. You can see that there is a frame rail right there. You're going to stack them together and make sure that the end that is elevated has the wheels. Now there's also a big sticker on this end, so you can make sure that that is up. But you're going to go ahead and elevate both of them this way, and then you can start raising and lowering. And as you do that, you're going to go ahead and bleed your cylinders. All right, before we can go ahead and bleed our cylinders, we need to connect up our hoses. So you can see I've turned my unit facing towards me to be able to put the hoses on. Now I have these set up. I'm looking backwards at them basically. But these will be, the stickers are at the rear of the car, which means the one on the left, I guess the right on the screen you would say, the driver's side has the lock to the outside, which means it's going to be my left. And the one on the left of the screen is going to be my right. Now, according to the manual, the right goes to B, which is going to be our lower fitting down here. The driver's side, the left, whatever you want to call it, goes to A. So go ahead and connect those up. And make sure that you have not pressed the up or down button on there. If you have any pressure on them, they're not going to connect well. So go ahead, you can press the down button to make sure your quick jacks lower all the way down, takes the pressure off. Now I've got a ratchet in here to one of the cylinders to bleed it. I'm going to get a rag over there because it says in the manual, expect it to lose fluid as you go. So we'll go ahead and get that ready. And I need to raise these after stacking them. You can see the blocks under there. This is two of the large, one of the medium. Holding them up, I need to move them up about 8 inches. And it says to go up to 8 inches, down completely, and do that 3 times before you open up the cylinder. So let's go ahead and get those started. And it says to go for about the first lock. So you can see it kind of clicked on the locks on the outside. And we'll go ahead and let this down. It says they'll lower down unevenly typically, but we're going to go ahead and let them go all the way down. Yep, there's one. All right, so I've got everything now bled out per the manual, and you can see it's still kind of raised. One thing I want to note here is that you need to be cautious of how your hoses are placed. Now, in the beginning, they tell you to angle them up, maybe at like a 20 to 30 degree angle from the edge. One thing you're going to notice as you start to raise your quick jacks is that the angle of this hose starts to go down to this cross member or the flat area. You can see it's got kind of a white dot. One thing to note, when you raise them up, be cautious, keep an eye on your hoses. One of my hoses was not angled enough and it started to contact that cross member and started to put pressure on that fitting. So I readjusted that, re-bled it. Everything's fine, but just note that if you didn't know or didn't be cautious, it may spring a leak later on. Keep an eye on the contact, readjust as needed. And once you have it done, we're going to go ahead and lower these down, get them off the blocks. And I think I'll double check my manual, but it might be the time to go ahead start lifting a car. All right, so now that everything's down back on the ground, one thing I want to note before you disconnect anything is go ahead and double check how much fluid is in the reservoir. Now remember, your cylinders and your hydraulic lines were empty when you took them out of the package. When you go ahead and fill them up, bleed all the air out, they are going to retain fluid, which means that reservoir is going to lose some. Overall total I took in after refilling, it was about 2.6 quarts, somewhere in there, of transmission fluid. So that is right in line with a little bit actually above what the manual said. It said 2.5, but 2.6. Go ahead and buy yourself 3 quarts. That way you have the extra as you need. And then once you have everything done, go ahead and give everything good clean. You can now get ready to move it in place to lift something, car, truck, whatever it is, and disconnect as you need to move it, and then stick it all together. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to lift up my Corvette here. Been itching to try this, and we'll see what happens with it. All right, so I got the car kind of lifted up a little bit. Whew, it is a very tight fit under this Corvette, so I've just got to be real cautious. The front ramp, the one towards the front of the car, very, very close to the exhaust. So I've got to be real careful with that, but it's sitting on the rest right now. And one thing they note in the manual, as you lift, the ramps are not going to lift straight up because of the way it is. They are actually going to start driving it towards the stickers, as they say. So you can see those are to the passenger side of the car. So as I lift this, what you would expect, or what I expect to see, is that the car is going to lift and also go towards the left of your screen. It's going to be picked up and it's going to be moved over that way. So I'm going to put the camera a little bit more in line. What I expect is that as I lift it, you'll see this thing move across the screen a little bit from, I guess, what would be your probably your right to left. Definitely, yep, you can definitely see it move. But there it is, it's picked up on the ground. Now when I let these down, I'm going to go ahead and throw in a 2x4 or a 2x6 really under the front wheels. That way I can go ahead and put this back down. It's going to give me a little bit of clearance just to be able to move these Quickjacks around as I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and set it back down, but there you go. Everything is assembled, trialed, and now I can move things around as I need to, and just be cautious of that. But man, look at the flexibility I now have in my garage. All right, so that's it. That is the assembly and operation of the set of Quickjacks. Now, I didn't raise it all the way up till the first set of locks. Didn't really need to. I just wanted to really test to see what it did to make sure the Corvette went up, because this is the lowest vehicle I have. Now, on the front edge, like I mentioned, the front, or the one that's placed at the front of the vehicle, on the 7000 series, which is the tallest that they make, just be cautious of your exhaust. I think everything else I own, 2 Suburbans, a half-ton truck, and a Fox Mustang. Those are all going to be just fine. They are definitely way taller than the Corvette is. So just know for myself to put some blocks under the front tires. That will make it easier to get the Quickjack in and out. But otherwise, it does fit with the 2-inch blocks, the 55 millimeter or the 2-inch blocks will work on the body. The 3 inches actually don't go under the side skirt. Now, everything is in your manual as you bought it. I will say the manual itself, I think the only thing I found as a discretion was the amount of fluid. The website says 2.1, the manual says 2.5. I used 2.6, very, very minor detail. Just buy 3 and you've got yourself covered in any fashion. Everything else I think was really good. Instructions were great. Lifts easily. I really like it. I'm really excited to have this because I have so much space challenges, I guess, here in the garage with 2 vehicles, and it's hard to do everything else. Just be cautious for how you lift. The cars I'll probably lift side to side. I guess I could do the Suburbans that way too. Just know that when it lifts up, it doesn't lift straight. It always lifts kind of angled back towards the sticker side, which you can kind of see down here to my side. Otherwise, it's going to be great. I've got a lot of work planned this winter, and this thing, just put it up on probably the first lock. It's going to be fantastic. You guys have any questions on this, or if you have any concerns about using them, go ahead and drop a comment down below. good video. Hopefully this explains a little bit so you guys can just understand how to put it all together. Really pretty simple. Just use thread tape, not the sealant, and just avoid that hassle. I didn't have any trouble, and most people I've seen online say the same thing. Use thread tape and you will not have any trouble. So that's it for this time from Basin Motorsports. I'll throw a link down in the description down to the different models, and I did grab the set of SUV adapters, the taller ones, to be able to lift, to make it a little easier to lift the Suburbans, which are 6,000 pounds, so the 7,000 is going to do that. Otherwise, if you have any questions, comments, anything else, check the links in the description, and we will see you next time. Thanks for stopping by.